how to be a wise spender? Can we, what? Rule number one, the most basic one, I think you have heard it many times. So maybe your parents, people around you say, is it, track your income and expenses. You can't make improvement if you can't measure. So that you have heard it as you many times before. Income and expenses is to always draw a budget. How many of you already having a budget, a monthly budget? A few of you, 50 hands. If I would like to, promote that all of you should maintain your budget. You don't have to keep track of your budget every night. Okay? All you need to do, maybe prepare it once in the beginning of the month, and then revisit it maybe in the middle of the month, or maybe then again you do an analysis at the end of the month, 2 or 3 times. I do my budget, okay, but I don't do it in a formal way. I do it at the back of every time you make an ATM withdrawal, you're going to have the transaction slip. I scribble something there. And, every time I make withdrawal, I scribble what's the purpose of it. And I take note. Right? At the end of the day, being the trained accountant I am, so I update all those things, sort it according to the dates, then I start doing my balance sheet, my P&L. Right? Some people choose it differently, a proper format. You can ask your Dr. Rizwan for these further tips. Okay? But the best thing is you need to keep track of your expenses, whichever way that you prefer it to be. Okay? By keeping true to your budget, I mean, always looking back at what you have budgeted against your actual expenses, you will be able to avoid spending on impulse. What I mean spending by impulse, when you come across something, let's say you like to go window shopping, then suddenly you see that that particular piece of thing that you like is being offered a very good discount. They normally do that as a marketing gimmick, right? The marketing people are very good at doing it, right? Then suddenly you feel, hey, I must have it, or else in any other time it would not be that cheap, so I have to buy it. But you never think for once whether you really need that particular thing. The first thing that you should be asking is, do I really need it? If I don't, then you ask yourself the second question. Can I afford it? Okay? Can I afford it? You start asking this question and you will put some senses back into yourself, and you'll be able to avoid impulse spending. And you keep looking at my budget. Oh, I think I'm just gonna meet my budget. It's just gonna be equilibrium as they see it. Okay, then may as well. No, I have to give it a pass this time around. Never mind. In 1 or 2 months' time, there will still be a similar discounts on the same item. Okay. So you should be able to do that. And along the way, you should also learn how to distinguish between what is termed as needs and wants. Do you know the difference between these two? I'm sure you know. Okay? Needs and wants. I don't need to elaborate and give examples. Okay? And it will also ensure that you're able to live within your means. Live within your means. Okay? So this is an example I've thrown in of a budget. A very simple one. It can be in many forms, as I just mentioned, but the main component of a budget and the cash flow. Normally a budget and a cash flow will come in hand in hand together. Main component of the cash flow are the income, the inflows, cash inflows, as well as the expenses, the cash outflow. The income can be fixed income coming from your salary, or maybe some other rental, for instance. It can also be variable income if you are into investment, for instance, you get some dividends at the end of the year, this kind of thing. And then expenses. Expenses, I would like to share with you that you can categorize some of these expenses into 3 main categories. First one is the fixed expenses. Fixed expenses where you have to incur it no matter what. For instance, if you're already later on having a high purchase loan where you need to make a monthly fixed repayment, that is categorized under fixed expenses. The next category is called variable expenses. These variable expenses involve things like your food, okay, the money that you spend on food, and then your utility bills if you're living on your own, for instance, where you can vary it from month to month. Astro bills, for instance, if you can't afford it, perhaps these are one of the things that you should tackle if you are having some tight money problem for that particular period. Okay? And also, the third category is discretionary expenses. Discretionary expenses are expenses that you incur for those things that nice to have. If you don't have it, also it doesn't matter to you, it doesn't give you any bad impact. Or if you have it, well and good. Okay? So if you're having that problem, the first thing you should attack to adjust is on the discretionary expenses, as you all know. Discretionary expenses will also involve people like me. Every time school holiday, my family will pressure me to take them to some holiday destination, for instance. Right? I always say, okay, it depends on the budget, for instance. These are part of the discretionary expenses. Okay? We can't afford it to go on holiday every school holiday, maybe at least once a year, for instance. Right? You will always have pressures from people around you, from the situation, you know, but you have to make the wise decision here. Okay? Once you have tackled all the discretionary expenses, then the next thing still, if it's not enough to put your income flow back on track, is to tackle the variable expenses. And worst comes to worst, you need to make adjustment to your fixed expenses. By all means, you tackle that and adjust the fixed expenses. In a way that, as I mentioned just now, if you're already having a car loan, you think that it's not, you can't afford this monthly installment, perhaps you may as well sell off the car and downgrade to maybe a Ganjil, maybe a lower brand car where you can have some cash being released from your fixed monthly expenses for you to use. It's all your choice. The power is in your hand.